it's Kayla, and I am here with another video, obviously. I guess I didn't really need to say that. But anyways, today I wanted to talk about everyone's favorite topic, or maybe it's just my favorite topic, but that is blind awkward moments, which I have a lot of. And if you are also blind, you probably have a lot of too, because let's just be honest, being blind is like being just one big ball of awkward. It just comes with the territory. It's part of the deal. That's just how it goes. But the silver lining is gives you a lot of material of funny stories to tell or just things to laugh at yourself about. And let's face it, if you can't laugh at yourself, this is going to be a tough journey. So because I have so many awkward moments, I decided to split this video up into two parts so it won't be ridiculously long. So this is part one, and in part one I'm going to be talking about awkward moments that I experience frequently, just kind of like ongoing or perpetual awkward situations that I find myself in, with some specific examples and awkward moments sprinkled in. And then part two is going to be just like a collection of awkward moments that don't just like have specific categories, just like a hodgepodge of awkward moment stories. So part two will be coming out soon. Once that is out, I will come back to this video and link it both in the description and in the cards. So I have to give a quick shout out to the inspiration for this video. I was listening to the podcast Rare with Flair, which is, if you guys remember Casey from How Casey Sees It, which is she was like an OG blind YouTuber, and her and I actually did a collab a while ago. I'll link that video as well. But she has a podcast with her friend Cassandra, who is also visually impaired, and so they did an episode on awkward blind moments, which I just related to so much. And listening to their episode, it just unlocked all of these awkward memories in my brain. They just all came flooding to the surface. And so I thought I need to share these in a video. So thanks to them for the inspiration. Also love their podcast. They also said something in the video, or not video, in their podcast that I really resonated with. They were talking about how in a lot of these awkward situations with being blind, you either look rude or stupid. And those are your two options. Like if you're not sure if someone is talking to you, you can either respond and look stupid if they weren't talking to you, or not respond and then look rude if they were talking to you. And I think that dynamic plays out in a lot of different situations across the board of these two options of I can either look rude or I can look stupid, and just neither one of those are good options. And I will also preface this video by answering a question that you may have as I'm talking about these situations, where you may say, but Kayla, don't these people know that you're blind? So wouldn't this not be awkward, or wouldn't they not react to you in that way? And to that, I say no. I wish it were that simple, but it is not. If we're talking about strangers, do strangers know that I'm blind? No, because I don't use my cane if I'm not out by myself, which I'm these days rarely out by myself. So if I am just going out to lunch with a friend or like to the store with my husband, I usually just go sighted guide. I don't use a cane. So no, these strangers don't know that I'm blind. And if I am using my cane, they still don't know that I'm blind. I don't know if they just don't understand what a cane is, or they still don't think that I look blind even if I'm using one, or they do realize I'm blind, but they still don't know how to interact with a blind person. I'm not sure which of those. But even with my cane, without my cane, it doesn't matter. People still, they don't treat me like I'm blind. And then if you're referring to personally, like people who know me, and you're saying, but Kayla, don't they know that you're blind? Yes, and kind of no. I coined this term. I tweeted this one time. I said, I feel like everybody knows that I can't see, but nobody understands that I can't see. And it got a lot of traction, so I'm guessing a bunch of people can relate to that. But it is so true that pretty much everyone in my life does know that I'm blind. They know that I can't see. It's not a secret. It's something I'm open about. It's talked about. And yet, so many people still treat me like I can see. But anyways, let's just get into this awkwardness. Well, actually, one more thing before I get in is I made a video a long time ago. It was like one of my OG videos. It's called Visually Impaired Awkward Moments. I will link that in the cards and also in the description below. But if you want to hear some other awkward moments and some of my most embarrassing moments of my life, those are in that video. Also very meta, talk about awkward moments or cringe moments. My early videos, they're really bad. So yeah, if you want to see a meta video of me talking about awkward moments while being very awkward in front of the camera, you can check that video out. It does have some pretty funny stories that I'm not going to retell in this part 1 and part 2. Okay, now I promise I'm done with that long introduction and I'm ready to get into the awkward moments. So first batch of awkward moments is interacting with people at some kind of like service desk, whether I am checking in for an appointment or I'm walking up to a counter to order food. First off, I can't even tell if someone is there or not. Generally, well, I guess depending on the lighting, sometimes I can see the shape of a person and I can tell if a person is there or where they are, but a lot of times I can't. And so I'm walking up to some kind of counter and I don't know if someone is there. And apparently saying, "Hi, can I help you?" or "Hi, what would you like?" is a dying art. No one says anything anymore. It's very frustrating and just kind of strange. So I'll walk up and crickets. And so I have the option of, do I just start talking and say, "Hi, I'm here to check in for an appointment." Cricket, cricket, cricket. And then realize, oh, no one's here. And then that's awkward. Or do I assume that no one's there and so I wait for someone to come? And so I'm just standing there waiting. And then sometimes the person that I'm with will be like, "Kaylee, you can go ahead and order." And then I'm like, oh, because I didn't realize that someone was already there. Or if I'm by myself or something, sometimes eventually if I stand there long enough, I'll like start to sense the presence of another person. And then I'll start talking kind of timidly, trying to like feel out if someone is there. And then they are. And that's always so awkward if I'm just standing there forever and someone is actually there at the counter, but they're not saying anything. And then what are they doing? Are they just staring at me, staring at them? Because I'm obviously not like looking at the menu or digging through my purse or something. I'm literally standing there just looking straight ahead. So I don't know what they think that I'm doing. I feel like they should say, "Can I help you? Are you ready? Hello?" Something, but I guess they just stand there and stare at me. Also, along with that, I don't know exactly where they are behind the counter. Sometimes even if they do say hello or something, just that one word isn't really enough for me to pinpoint their location to be able to look in their direction. Or if they're not saying anything and someone I'm with says, "Go ahead and order," I'll start talking and say, "I want the blah, 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 blah." And then they'll ask me a question and I have to like turn my head and continue talking to them. And I was talking to them in the opposite direction that they were. Like my head will be to the right and actually they're to the left. And then once you get past that part, then you have to do the awkwardness of exchanging whatever it is, like a credit card, receipt, things like that. So I always do this little dance where I pull out my credit card and then I'm like, is there a machine? Do I give it to you? Where is it? Because I never know if there's a card reader on the desk, if I'm supposed to hand it to them, what do I do? So that's awkward. And then if I do hand it to them, and then I'm expecting for them to at some point hand it back to me, I'll hold out my hand for it. And sometimes they don't put it in my hand. Sometimes when I'm with someone else, they'll inform me that the person has set it down on the counter or that they are holding it out to me, even though I have my hand out. And so the other person that I'm with will take the card from their hand and then put it into my hand. I don't understand. I have my hand out. Just put it in my hand. Or one time I was checking in for a doctor's appointment and I was handing them my insurance card and I was holding it out to them and I was holding it and they weren't taking it. So eventually I was like, oh, I guess they don't need it. So I took it back, and my mom told me at the moment that I took it back was the exact moment that she reached for it. So it looked like I was just being a jokester, like, oh, too slow, like pulling the card away from her, which I was not. And then I felt awkward that that's what it seemed like I was doing. Okay, so moving away from strangers and getting into more of like social situations, the first thing is I can't recognize people. I feel like that's obvious. If I can't even see a person at all to even know that there's a person there or to know where the person is to look in the right direction, I clearly cannot recognize their facial features to be able to identify them. I mainly identify people by their voices, but it's not a perfect science. It sometimes takes a bit to get to know someone's voice to be able to recognize it. Also, I think the bigger the group is, the harder it is to recognize voices, and the less context there is, the harder it is to place someone's voice. So for example, if someone comes up to me when I'm at the grocery store and says, "Hi, Kayla," it could literally be anyone I've ever met in my entire life. I don't know who it is. There is no context. And so in situations like that, it's difficult to recognize a voice, especially if it's a person that I maybe haven't seen in a long time, and so I'm not as used to their voice. And so then it's awkward because I don't know how to respond to them because I don't know who they are. I don't know how excited to be, like, "Hey, oh my gosh, I haven't seen you in forever." Or if I just should say, "Oh, hey, how are you?" Because I don't know in what way I know this person. I don't know how familiar or formal our relationship is because I don't know who they are, so I don't know how to respond. I don't know what to say to them, and I do not know, for the life of me, how to not awkwardly ask, "Who are you?" So please tell me in the comments below, if you're a fellow blind person, how do you not awkwardly ask someone, "Who are you?" when you clearly know them? And especially if it's someone that I knew a while ago, that they knew me back when I had a little bit better vision, and so they just don't understand that I can't see their face and I don't know who they are because maybe I used to be able to recognize them. It's so uncomfortable. It's probably the most uncomfortable situations on this list. I have many of times carried on a brief, casual conversation with someone that I did not know who they are. Just a general back and forth of, "Hey, how are you? Oh, I'm good. What are you up to? Blah, blah, blah." And then we'll leave and I'll ask the person I'm with, I'm like, "Who was that? Who was I just talking to?" So just a tip to sighted people when interacting with blind or visually impaired people, just state your name when you come up to them. Be like, "Hey, Kayla, it's so-and-so." It makes it so much easier, even if you think that they recognize your voice or they know who you are. Okay, so next thing is it's kind of similar to what I was talking about. Someone working at a service desk with looking not in their direction. This happens in social situations too, that I will think that I'm looking at someone, but then I realize that I'm not. Like, I think they're straight ahead, but they're actually to the left, or I'm looking lower than they actually are, or something like that. I'm looking not in their direction, and I don't realize until the conversation goes on a little bit more, and the more they talk, the more I can precisely place where they are. And sometimes people will move while you're talking to them. They'll shift around. They'll maybe step to the side. They'll maybe walk over to grab some food off the table or something. They'll move, but like they're still engaged in the conversation. They didn't just walk away. They've moved, and I don't realize that they've moved until I finish what I'm saying, and then they respond, and then I have to whip my head around way over here, and I realize that I have just been talking to the empty space where they were. But that is not as awkward as these next two things, which is talking when no one is listening or talking when nobody is there. And sometimes, being the blind girl that I am, I can't tell the difference. I don't know if it's because whoever I thought was there isn't listening or didn't hear me, or if they aren't there. The thing where someone isn't listening, I think, happens mainly in a social group setting where just kind of everyone's talking and there's like a lot of side conversations. And so sometimes I try to join in and I'm not sure if people are listening. Sometimes I'll be telling a story and there's a lot of side conversations going on and I don't know if anyone's listening to me or not. And it's awkward. I feel so awkward while I'm telling my story because I'm like, I don't know if anyone's listening. Do I keep talking? Do I stop talking? Because it's awkward if I keep talking and no one's listening. But also sometimes I have been telling a story and then I'm like, oh, nobody's listening. And I'll stop talking and then someone says, I'm listening. And then that's awkward too. I think a lot of these situations are kind of like, damned if you do, damned if you don't. It's gonna be awkward either way you go. So with that, I have a very recent awkward moment to tell. So by recent, this was like last week. This still feels fresh. It still feels awkward because it is so fresh that I even debated if I wanted to talk about it in this video. But I was at my sister's house. She was having a get together with some of her friends. And these are friends of hers from like 10, 15 years. So these are not strangers to me. I've been around these people. They know me. I was facing my husband like to the left and we were kind of chatting, but not really. And then there was a lot of side conversation going on kind of to the side of me and behind me. And I heard my sister's friend who I thought was Rachel who said that she was in a book club. And so I turned around and I said, oh, what book are you reading? You know, to try and join in the conversation. And then no one answered. And so then I felt awkward. And then my sister said, Kayla, are you talking to me? And I was like, oh, who said that they were in a book club? And my sister said, oh, that was Rachel. And then my sister's other friend was like, yeah, that was Rachel. And then at that point, I expected Rachel to be like, oh, what? And then I could say, oh, I was just asking what book you were reading. But that did not happen. Rachel didn't say anything. And so then I was like, cricket, don't know what to do. And then I'm like, okay, I'm going to try and save the awkwardness. Just keep rolling with my conversation. And so I said to my sister, I was like, Cassie, are you reading a book? Because she had said, are you talking to me when I asked what book are you reading? So I just thought I'd ask her, are you reading a book? And then she didn't answer. And then I just felt awkward. And it just, I don't know. I never know how to save face in those situations. I don't know what to do after I have made this awkward thing of talking to nobody. And again, I don't know if Cassie or Rachel, I don't know if they had walked away or if they were just engaged in conversation with someone else, if they were listening to someone else's side conversation. I'm not saying that they ignored me. That's not what I'm saying at all. So don't think that they were being mean to me by ignoring me, because that's not what happened. I think they didn't hear me either because they were engaged in a different conversation or because they had walked away. I honestly don't know which of those happened. But I never know how to recover after I have tried to make conversation to the abyss. This also happens sometimes when I'm like having a conversation with someone and there's back and forth and we're talking, and then I'll turn and say something else to them and then they don't respond and I realize that they have walked away and I didn't realize that they had walked away. So I'm talking to the air and I just feel so awkward in conversations with people in general, because every time I say something or like start a new topic or something, I'm always wondering, are they still here? So another funny story with that, I had gone with Ethan. We were out to eat somewhere. We ordered at the counter. We sat down. And when we were walking in the restaurant, Ethan was like, oh, I left my phone in the car. And I was like, oh no, now you'll have to actually talk to me instead of being on your phone. Just playful. He's not on his phone all the time, just sometimes. And so we were sitting at our table waiting for our food, and I said something to him and he didn't answer me, and I was like, oh look, you don't have your phone and you're still not talking to me. And then I realized he wasn't there. He had gone to pick up our food. And he knows better than to just walk away. He actually said, I guess they had called his name and I didn't hear it. And he said, oh, that's us, and got up and got the food. I didn't hear any of that. I don't know how I missed that. So I was getting on to him when he wasn't even there. I think the most awkward thing about it was that there was a table of people behind where Ethan was sitting. So when he wasn't there, I was just talking in their exact direction, talking to nobody. The next thing that causes me frequent awkwardness is handshakes. I cannot tell when someone is trying to shake my hand. So sometimes I will just go ahead and put my hand out, assuming that someone is trying to shake my hand, to avoid the awkwardness or avoid appearing as rude if I don't reciprocate their handshake. But sometimes I feel like I have a hard time determining the social appropriateness of shaking hands. I don't really know when to initiate a handshake. And so sometimes if I just go by the rule of thumb of I just always initiate the handshake so I don't miss theirs and don't seem rude or awkward, I think sometimes it's awkward for me to always initiate handshakes because sometimes it's a situation where a handshake is not warranted and it's weird. But also sometimes I've reached my hand out to shake someone else's, assuming that that's what they wanted to do, and didn't realize that they had their hands full. And so then they're scrambling, trying to put their stuff under their arms or set some things down to shake my hand. And then I feel awkward that I've made them all flustered by trying to shake their hand when they didn't have any. I have a lot of stories about awkward handshakes, but one that I will tell is I was in high school and I would get my tests read to me. So I had a test, I took it down to the classroom where the teacher was that would read my test. And I walked in and there were several teachers in there and they were like, oh, Miss So-and-so is going to read your test today. And so they kind of facilitated an introduction. They said, Miss So-and-so, this is Kayla. Kayla, this is Miss So-and-so. And she had her hand out. So this was back when I had more vision. I would still miss handshakes all the time because it would be out of my peripheral vision. But occasionally I would look down to see if they had their hand out. And so she had her hand out. So I reached out and shook her hand. And the other teachers started laughing and they're like, ah, ha, ha, and Kayla's very friendly too, ha, ha, ha. And then I realized I'm pretty sure she had her hand out for my papers. She was reaching for my test papers, not to shake my hand. So just an example of even when I try to beat them to it or assume that they're going to shake my hand, so I put mine out, it still doesn't save me from the awkwardness. The last awkwardness I will talk about today is having my picture taken. I really do not like having my picture taken. I feel like I have a hard time knowing where the camera is, knowing where to look. I'm afraid that I don't look good in the pictures. I'm just realizing that 75% of this video is feeling awkward about looking in the wrong direction. But oh well. I do not like being photographed and feeling like I look goofy because I am looking in the wrong direction or whatever it may be. So if I'm posing for some kind of portrait, if my family is like, oh, let's take a family picture, something like that, I'll just tell whoever is taking the picture to count to 3 so I can follow their voice and be looking in the right direction. Again, it's not an exact science. It doesn't mean that I'm looking exactly at the camera just because I'm looking in their general direction, or sometimes they'll be holding the camera higher or lower than I think it is. And then if someone wants to take a selfie with me, I don't know if the camera is straight in front, if it's to the side, if it's up. You can take selfies with all kinds of different angles, and so I never know where to look. In those situations, I'll try to, if I can, touch where the camera is so I know where to look. But People don't always give me the opportunity to do that. So I usually ask if I'm being photographed. I'll ask people like, am I looking? Because I want them to tell me. I do not want a picture where I'm not looking and just like looking all goofy. I don't want to look bad in pictures. So it's way less awkward if someone tells me, hey, you're not looking, than if they take the picture and then I look stupid. So they're sparing their awkwardness to say you're not looking at the expense of my awkwardness of looking a goof in a picture. I also can't see myself in pictures, so I cannot look at it and say, oh yeah, this is good, or look at it and say, oh no, this looks terrible, can we retake it? I have to trust them if I look good, and I think we all know that. People determine if it's a good picture if they look good, not if everyone looks good. But the worst of being photographed is, and my family is very guilty of this, at a family function, someone will say my name, they'll say Kayla, and I'll turn to them, and they don't say anything, and I'm like, what? Yes. Hello. And then either someone else will say they're taking a picture, or they themselves will finally say, I'm trying to take a picture of you. You have to tell me. I do not get the visual cue. Like, that's a very sighted person thing for you to say, hey, Kayla, and I look and see a camera and say, cheese, and then they take the picture and I go about my business. I do not have the visual cue of knowing that they're holding a phone or a camera up to me when I look over at them. You have to tell me that you're taking a picture. It drives me crazy. So that's always uncomfortable, especially if they say, Kayla, and I turn and look at them and someone else says they're taking a picture and the person taking the picture doesn't speak. I don't know where to look. I don't know where your camera is, and then I'm gonna look dumb in the picture looking in the wrong direction. And on top of that, I also don't get the visual cue when they are done taking the picture. So snap the picture, lower their phone. Sighted person says, okay, they've lowered their phone, the picture's done, I'm gonna go back to my business. I don't have that visual cue, and so there have been times where I have just been sitting there smiling and not realize that they had already taken the picture and moved on. They're not even looking at me anymore, and I'm just sitting there just smiling at the wall. So pro tip, if you want to take a picture of a blind person, can say their name, Kayla, I want to take your picture, look over here, I'm over here. Oh, you're not looking, a little bit to the left. Okay, got it, great. Like some kind of verbal cue at the end, like got it, okay, done, beautiful, whatever you want to say, but some kind of verbal cue that you have taken your photo and that it is complete. And it wouldn't be complete if I didn't share an awkward photo taking story. So one time I had just graduated from college. I was at the beach with my mom and my sister, and my mom had asked this group of people if they would take a picture of the three of us. So this man is taking our picture. He's talking to us while he's taking it. He's saying something about our photo. I don't know, something about the way that we looked or the way that we posed or whatever. And he was like to the right. So I had my head turned to the right, I was posing, had my hands on my hip, had like my leg bent, all of that. And I'm, looking at him smiling. And then there was a woman in front of us and she goes, why is she looking over there? Or what is she looking at? Something like that. And my mom was like, oh, honey, she's right in front of us. So the man who was talking, who was to the right, wasn't the one taking the picture. I just assumed because he was talking to us. He was saying something about how we were posed. So I assumed that he was taking the picture, but I guess he was just observing, making commentary. But the person actually taking the picture was directly in front of us. So I wasn't looking at all. I don't think she had to be so rude with saying, why is she looking over there? But I do understand that it probably looked very awkward because why am I looking over there? Maybe that man was her husband. Why am I just standing there, leg bent, hands on my hips in my bikini, just cheesing, smiling at her husband? I don't know. I'm sure it did look very uncomfortable. It's probably uncomfortable for them. It was uncomfortable for me. It was awkward all around. But the worst part of it is that my mom posted that picture on Facebook of her and my sister looking at the camera and me looking way over here with my head completely turned to the side, which was so completely unnecessary. We retook the picture. There was a picture where I was looking. She posted both of them. Unnecessary. Please do not post stupid photos of me on the internet. Thank you. All right, so that's a wrap for this video. I hope you enjoyed it. I hope that you could maybe relate to some of these awkward scenarios. I know it always makes me feel better to hear about other blind people's awkwardness. It makes me feel less alone and just more able to laugh at myself in these situations, to know that other people experience them too. So make sure you stay tuned for part 2 coming out soon, and I will see you guys next time.